Well, I assume that everybody got 10 great answers for their Chapter 1 questions. The one thing I will tell you is that I answer questions in layman's terms. I don't want you just to go ahead and take the excerpt from the book and memorize it. I want you to understand conceptually what the questions are asking and what the answers mean. And I may be repetitive from the lecture when I answer the questions as far as examples. If I am, I apologize for that. All right, so the first question was, what was the major difference between accounting and finance, and what functions are typical for accounting, what functions are typical for finance? Accounting keeps score, and finance creates and manages wealth by asset allocation. So if we were to look at examples of accounting, they would be compiling financial statements, performing audits, calculating variance analysis or variances. And then finance, if you remember right, that would be things like negotiating leases and securing funds for purchases or maybe floating a bond. I'm not going to write, as you can tell, I didn't write down all of the answers for the second part of that question, but you all know where they are, and I'm sure you all wrote them down. All right, what's the goal of financial management? The easiest answer for what's the goal of financial management is to maximize the wealth of the company, or maximizing shareholder wealth. On some tests, I just ask what the goal of financial manager is, and it's maximizing shareholder wealth. It's funny, I've actually taught students who are really culinary focused in the past, and of course they don't realize that the whole reason to open a restaurant is to maximize shareholder wealth, so to earn a good living. And that is the goal of any restaurant, and that should be the goal of any hotel operation. What are the two major functions of a financial manager? And those are investing and financing. If you look at all of those functions under the financial manager, they have to do with either acquiring funds or using those funds to create more wealth. Number 4, what are the 3 major mechanisms that have evolved over the years to minimize owner-manager conflict, and how do they operate? They are performance-based managerial compensation packages, board of directors, and threat of takeover. And if you look in the footnotes, you see greenmail and poison pill. I may ask you what greenmail and poison pill are, and that's why they're actually on this answer, and they were on the lecture. So as we said, if we were to give a manager $60,000, regardless of their profits, they're going to be less motivated than if we gave them $40,000 in unlimited profits, and they had the ability to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there are companies that do that. I believe I told you before that a lot of CEOs actually take a dollar salary or a very small annual salary, and they tie all of their income to bonuses and to stock options. If you remember, the board of directors acts in the best interest of the owners or the shareholders. And then we have ways to minimize threat of takeover, and that was greenmail and poison pill. Greenmail, if you remember, is where the stock or the company actually buys stock back above market value in an effort to maintain majority ownership. And a poison pill is very common. It's when if a company's ownership changes, all of the debt is due immediately. What are the 2 major categories of capital on the balance sheet, and what's the difference between them? There we have real assets and we have claims on assets. Real assets are the building, the one that I think about when I do this is there's actually gold, and then there's gold stocks. Gold is the tangible gold that you wear around your neck that you can hold in your hand, and a gold stock is actually a claim on gold somewhere else. So you don't even have gold, you have a piece of paper. So you have a claim on that asset of a stock. Number 6, why must assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity? I always use the example of the car of this. If we have a car in our business, or if you have a car in your personal, your own personal car, that's an asset. That's a tangible asset. And then we have claims on that asset, and somebody's got to own it. So the bank may own some, and you may own some, but you add those 2 percentages together, and they equal 100. You could own it all, If you just bought the car, as we said before, it was zero down and you're not making a payment for 45 days, all of the claim on that ownership is going to be with the bank, and you're going to have zero. So somewhere we've got to have ownership of the asset, and some of it's ours and some of it's theirs. And if it's ours, it's going to be on the asset side, and if it's theirs, it's on the if it's ours, it's on the owner's equity side portion of the balance sheet, and if it's theirs, it's on the liability portion. And that's the reason why assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity. What three characteristics determine the value to an owner of all future dividends? If you look in the book, we have risk, timing, and magnitude. The riskier a cash flow is in the future, the less it's worth today. Okay, if we were to think about the lottery, you can spend $1 to win up to $1,000 on a pick 3. It's risky, but it's not nearly as risky. I think it's 1 in 10,000. If you were to look at a pick 6 lotto, I bet you I think it's 1 in 177 million. So you're spending twice as much, $2, and that future amount is much higher because of the risk. So it's not worth much more from an additional investment because of the 1 in 177 million. So risk affects cash flows. The higher the risk in the future, the less it's worth today. Timing, the more often we get paid. If we get paid once a month, we like that better than getting paid once a year. So the present value of those future cash flows, if they're more often, then it'll have a higher present value. And then magnitude, of course, the size of them. The larger they are, the larger they're worth today. What is the basic relationship in finance that's expressed by the equation W sub 0 plus dividend sub 0, or equals dividend plus 0 plus VO times dividend sub time? And if you remember right, I gave you that as the value of stock today is equal to the dividend today plus the present value of all future dividends at some rate of risk. If you remember, I said we could actually substitute dividend for OCF and W sub 0 for the value of a hotel or restaurant, and we can use this formula to actually calculate the present value or the selling price or the market value of a hotel or restaurant, or any business for that matter. And why do people invest? And if you remember right, that was, or how can hospitality managers act in the best interest of the owners with different future compensation cash flow needs, and that's by maximizing stock price. People invest to increase their consumption power is another answer. The example I gave you on the lecture was you all are going to school to increase your consumption power. You may not choose to work when you leave, but your consumption power has definitely increased. People buy a stock and it increases their consumption power, and it doesn't increase their consumption ability until they sell the stock. Why does focusing on the best interest of the owners benefit all of the firm's suppliers of financial capital? Well, if the owners are taken care of, then everybody else is taken care of. The only way the owners have net income is if all of the creditors are paid and the government's paid in taxes. So if we can go ahead and have a strong net income, then everybody's happy. And that's the solutions to your first chapter. The second chapter, if you look, is going to be, I'm going to use layman terms again to answer the questions. So you may not want to go ahead and just copy directly what's out of the book. But when you study for the test, I would study my answers more so than the textbook answers because I wrote the test. All right, thanks, and I will talk to you shortly.